What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson, and the 2-5 New York Giants are coming off a big win over the Washington Commanders, and they're looking ahead to Week 8 where they will be facing the New York Jets in the MetLife Bowl. But looking past that even further, you have the NFL trade deadline coming up. Now, the Giants at 2-5, some believe that they should be sellers at the deadline, trading away some of their best players, their most valuable assets. Plenty of names have come up in the discussions from fans over who the New York Giants should consider trading, and the number one name that got brought up for the past few weeks was running back Saquon Barkley. But now Saquon Barkley said he doesn't want to be traded, and the New York Giants are reportedly not planning on trading Saquon Barkley away this season. So we're going to go ahead and discuss whether or not we think that's the right decision for the New York Giants, and what we think they could get for Saquon Barkley if they decided to go ahead and try and trade him, which, again, they're planning on not doing this season. But before we dive into all that, make sure to leave a like if you do enjoy this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts on the topic down below in the comment section. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. But without further ado, Alex, how are you doing today, my friend? And what are your thoughts on the Giants making the decision to not trade away Saquon Barkley this season?
Well, I'm doing pretty well, and there is a real conversation to have about this, and I think that 99% of people are going to say they don't want to trade Saquon, and I completely understand why. You see him, the second he's healthy and back in this offense, the unit looks different. It looks like they have some life, looks like they have some gusto, and the truth is that the team is better with him on it. That's the truth. But at the same time, this is my biggest concern, and this has nothing to do with Saquon at all. This has everything to do with how the Giants have set up their offense. And the truth is that the Giants have relied far too much on the running back position to save their asses. That is an unsustainable strategy. In fact, it's probably what has gotten them to this point, aside from the offensive line falling apart. Saquon Barkley makes the freaking train go. He is the coal in the fire. But at the end of the day, the offensive line and the passing game should be the coal to the fire, and Saquon Barkley should be the last piece to the puzzle, right? He should be, the booster, like the jets, like the booster jets on an airplane, on a fighter jet or whatever it might be, or on a car. He should be the last thing, the guy that boosts it to an even higher level, an even higher octane. He should not be the one that fuels the entire offense's productions. So that's where I get a little bit concerned about the future of this offense, is that I don't think we've properly built it so that we are leaning on the proper things that need to be performing at high levels, right? The offensive line needs to be solid at the very least, and then the wide receivers have to be good. And I think Darren Waller is still more than capable of being a really solid option. Wan'Dale's looking like he's coming on pretty well. Jalen Hyatt's been having a couple good games. I'm pretty optimistic about this group of players, and I think we could add one more, receiver, whether it be someone like a WR1 to replace Darren Waller. Maybe you add it in addition to Darren Waller. There is a couple options to consider next free agency, but we're kind of far from that right now. So Saquon Barkley, he's an asset, right? Like if you're in a situation where your passing game is solid, your offensive line's solid, you're doing well, you have a running back who's performing well, but he's not really there. He's good, but he's not great. Saquon Barkley is like the last piece to the puzzle you put into place, so that way you take your offense to another level. The Giants are not there. Now, the problem is, and Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll have been trapped, because they also know that right now they don't stand a chance of winning games without Saquon. So they have to keep him, because if they don't have Saquon, they're going to lose football games. And that reflects poorly on their decisions. And then John Mara loves Saquon Barkley. So it's kind of a really backward line of thinking. Like I wish that Saquon was like, we had just traded for him. Our offense was already good, and he was the last piece of the puzzle, and we could take off running. But instead, we're relying on him to win us football games at times. And why is that unsustainable? Well, you tell me. The running back position is one of the most injured in football. It is the most injured in football. And Saquon has already missed a multiple of games this year. And in the past, he's missed seasons. You know what I mean? That is why we have, it's not why, but it's a reason why this offense has struggled at times. And he's capable of doing things that not many other players can do. And that's what makes him so special. And it really hurts me, Anthony, to see a player of this magnitude get wasted behind a Giants offensive line, behind a Giants unit that just can't get going. The passing game, if we had a good passing game, think about what Saquon could have done for this team. What he could have done on top of what he's doing. And that's what really frustrates me, is that like we're wasting his talent, and because of that, and because we're leaning on this one player to kind of like rise up and carry us at times, it's put us in a pretty tough spot. And do I want to trade Saquon Barkley? No, I don't think anyone wants to trade Saquon Barkley. But this offense we're not winning a championship anytime soon, and I'm not sure that we ever will. Not with Saquon, but I don't know if Daniel Jones can be a championship winning quarterback. I don't know if our offensive line can get there. I don't know if Mike Kafka can call plays at that level. I just don't know if we're going to get there over the next couple of years. And if you can sit here and tell me that you think this team has a really good chance of winning, then sure, like keep Saquon and whatever. But like thinking long term, is it better to trade Saquon Barkley? Is it better to get assets now while he still has value and he's still 26 years old and can help a team and maybe you get a mid-round selection for him? Maybe it's worth it. But if you ask Joe Shane and Brian Dable, they're probably going to tell you he's one of the only reasons we actually remain competitive offensively right now. And I think they're thinking more so about their jobs than anything else. They're probably like, if we lose a lot of games, we might lose our jobs, and Saquon Barkley helps us win games. So I don't know. It kind of feels like it's like they're trapped. Obviously, you love Saquon, great dude. He's an asset to the team. I just wish we weren't wasting his talent right now in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, the Giants have been wasting their talents, but also the Giants have been in positions to win games where Saquon Barkley hasn't been on the field. I mean, he's missed a lot of games throughout his career, and when you're looking at the running back position, as you mentioned, Alex, the most injury-prone position in football, and also on the Giants, probably the most valuable piece of their team right now on the trade market, right? If you were to take any New York Giants player that's a trade candidate, whether you're talking about Leonard Williams or Adoree Jackson or Saquon Barkley, I think those are the three that stand out as the most tradable pieces. Saquon Barkley is definitely the most valuable player. So we talk about the running back position being injury prone, and we also talk about it being devalued, but Saquon Barkley is the Giants running back, and he's also their most valuable trade asset. So it's up to the team whether they want to build for the future or if they feel like Saquon Barkley can still be part of their future plans. Now, if you trade Saquon Barkley away, what can you get for him? I think that at the most you're getting a second round pick, but realistically it's probably a third or a fourth, right? You look at the Giants, they traded a third round pick for Darren Waller. Tight end, also not the most valuable position in football, an injury prone player in Waller as well, but he fit a huge need for them. A third round pick sounded about right for Darren Waller, maybe a steal on the side of the Giants if you think more carefully about it, but at the time, third round pick, now you look at it, probably a good deal for him, and that's why I think a similar deal for Saquon Barkley. Now, Saquon Barkley a little bit younger, but also the running back position. Every team has an established starting running back. Nobody's really seeking a starting running back. If they're trading for Saquon Barkley, they're seeking for a superstar who could transform an offense. And that's what the New York Giants have. They have somebody who does transform their offense. Whether you agree with running backs being a focal point of an offense, whether you think that they can make that big of a difference, I think that Saquon Barkley has proven time and time again that he makes that big of an impact and that big of a difference when he's on the field for the New York Giants. It's not only about how many touches he gets, how many yards he puts up, and how many touchdowns he scores. A lot of it also has to do with the fact that he can block in pass protection. There was a big play in last week's game where Tyrod Taylor almost got sacked, but Saquon Barkley made a very nice pass protection play, blocked an incoming blitzer, gave Tyrod Taylor a little bit of extra time in the pocket so he could survey the field and make a throw downfield. And we've seen Saquon Barkley do that numerous times before. Also, the other key factor for Saquon Barkley here that's not about him holding the football is the fact that when he's on the field, defenses take notice. Defenses play the Giants completely differently. You're going to see more loaded boxes, which leads to more downfield shots and better pass protection. So there's a lot of different variables at play here, and it's not just about can Saquon Barkley still rush for 1,000 yards, which of course he can. He's still that talented. But really with Saquon Barkley, what you're talking about is the way that he changes this offense at every single level in terms of pass protection, rushing, receiving, and creating more downfield shots for his teammates. Saquon Barkley is a very valuable player for the New York Giants. But all that being said, he is a running back, and a lot of teams in the NFL, top teams in the NFL, get by with backup running backs as starters, essentially, or rookies on rookie deal running backs, or guys who are making way less than the output of production that they're putting onto the field. So why do the New York Giants need a Saquon Barkley, need that luxury sports car in the backfield rather than your reliable Honda Civic? That's the question that the New York Giants need to answer. Do they need that superstar, that luxury sports car in their backfield, or do they want to take the assets they can get from him and build towards the future, build through the trenches, build with playmakers in the receiving game? That's what you're talking about when you're trading away Saquon Barkley. You could take that pick that you get for him and you can invest it right into into the offensive line. And one could argue that an offensive line is more important than a running back. No matter how good the running back is, if you have a dominant offensive lineman or at least a solid starter on the offensive line, that might have more value to your team in both facets of the game, passing and rushing. So I do think it's a nuanced conversation, Alex. I don't really know where I stand on it. If the New York Giants were to trade Saquon Barkley, I would be interested and intrigued by it, depending on the return that they got. But I do think there's a lot to be said about how Saquon Barkley affects this team, how the offense runs through him, and I do think that keeping him for the rest of the year is the wise decision. You can always wait till the offseason, tag and trade him. Then you're talking about a much decreased value probably in the return. But that is an option for the Giants if they don't feel ready to move on from him right now. One thing that I am curious to see, though, Alex, is how does Daniel Jones perform when he's back in the lineup with a healthy Saquon Barkley? Now, the last time Daniel Jones was in the lineup and had Saquon Barkley on the field with him, the Giants won against the Arizona Cardinals, put up 31 total points, their highest total of the season. But now for the past couple of weeks, Tyrod Taylor has been in the lineup while Daniel Jones nurses his neck injury, and also Saquon Barkley has been in the lineup. Tyrod Taylor's been playing well. The offense has made a lot of progress, has looked a lot better, and so you wonder, is that all Tyrod Taylor? Is that all Saquon Barkley? Is a combination of both? What is the contributing variable here? So I'm curious to see how Daniel Jones performs when he's back in the lineup with Saquon Barkley playing alongside him, and I'm curious to ask you, Alex, what you think about that. How do you think that Saquon Barkley's presence in the lineup can kind of change the narrative on this quarterback conversation and help bolster the play of Daniel Jones when he is healthy to return?
I mean, Saquon Barkley helps everyone for a number of reasons. Of course, as I mentioned, absolute asset. You know, I wish it was different circumstances that we had a talent of his magnitude. It just sucks to watch it waste. But what can he do for this offense? Well, it's pretty obvious, right? When Saquon Barkley's on the field, defenses have to account for him. You can't just let Matt Breida beat you. You know, defense are like, all right, Matt Breida, come and beat us. Gary Brightwell, come and beat us. Eric Gray, come. We're not scared of you. We're not going to stack the box against you. We'll just sit back in coverage. We'll bite on the routes, and we'll have help over the top. And bam, like it's easy. You know, when you have Saquon Barkley, he can turn what is a negative play into a 50-yard run, into a touchdown, into a first down, whatever it might be. You have to allocate eyes and multiple sets of them. So, you know, you're looking at a linebacker, you're looking at a safety, you're looking at edge rushers. They're all keeping their eyes on Saquon Barkley and not on the quarterback and not on Daniel Jones. And when you have eyes looking at the running back position, you don't have eyes looking at the quarterback position. And that allows Daniel Jones to find his targets because he tends to stare down his receivers. Now, with that being said, if a linebacker and your play action with Saquon Barkley, those linebacker eyes are probably looking in the direction of Saquon and not Daniel Jones. So, you know, you're probably going to get away with some routes that should have been undercut and may not have been because the attention is being allocated differently. The play action opens up completely because those linebackers bite down. You can hit them over the top of the second level. Those seam routes, you know, Darren Waller, those crossing concepts, that's where you're going to see, Daniel Jones have a lot of success. Saquon Barkley opens up a lot, right? Like he really does. And, you know, what we need to see is Saquon Barkley and this offensive line. That's what we really need to see. We need to see Andrew Thomas back. We need to see John Michael Schmitz back, and we need to see, you know, what happens on the right side. And I don't know if Evan Neal's going to play, but Andrew Thomas back alone, you can manipulate the pocket just with Andrew Thomas available, right? If he's available, you can reset the pocket. You can move up to the left side. You can use slide protections. You can help yourself. You can help Daniel Jones buy time in the pocket. And give him that extra split second to find a receiver downfield. What I think is that Tyrod Taylor did a really good job maneuvering around the pocket when there really wasn't any and there was a lot of pressure. He had really good pocket awareness, and, you know, Daniel Jones has gotten better in that regard. But I do think that ultimately, if all cylinders are firing, Daniel Jones has the most upside here. He has the potential to be a much better player than Tyrod Taylor. That's not to say that I don't appreciate what Tyrod just did for us, which is a lot. You know, he really kind of came in and saved our butts at times. So what I will say is that Saquon Barkley on the field is going to make Daniel Jones better. The offensive line getting healthier is going to make Daniel Jones better. But my main concern is how much better, right? Like what version of Daniel Jones are we going to get on a weekly basis? Because I have to say at times I get concerned that we get a different DJ every week, you know, and maybe that's because he's losing players. Maybe that's because Saquon's not healthy. Maybe that's because, the offensive line is unhealthy. But, you know, I find that if Saquon goes down, our passing attack should at least still remain competent to a degree. And for some reason, Saquon going down is devastating. Like it affects our passing attack so much that it concerns me. That's really where I get like, okay, you know what? Like there's a lot of reliance on the running back position to elevate this offense, and that shouldn't be the case. That should be the last thing you include is the running back position. The passing attack should be sustainable without Saquon Barkley being there. That's where you start to add in the last element, the last piece of the puzzle of a star running back, like, for example, what the 49ers did with, of course, Christian McCaffrey. Look at what Miami does. You have, obviously, a phenomenal group of receivers there in Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. And then you have Raheem Mostert and David Achane, and they're just freak athletes. And Miami's actually going through a process right now where they're realizing they're getting beat by more physical clubs. Like, they're just losing because they're not the most physical on the field. They are a speed, athletic team. And they can win any single game, like any given day. But they got beat up by the Eagles a little bit because they just were out-muscled. And the Eagles, I mean, they have a dominant run game. But you watch what Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown have. I want the Giants to have that so badly. I want the Giants to have a receiver where Daniel Jones can say, screw it, go, like, here you go, buddy. Double coverage, I know he's coming down with it. Throw it up there, he's coming down with it. And he doesn't, I think Waller could be that, but at times I don't think Daniel Jones trusts himself to make those throws, especially with the offensive line crumbling. Sometimes he kind of gets a little nervous, a little happy feet like Eli did at the end of his career. He gets a little nervous and his eyes drop. You know what I mean? Instead, he's looking downfield, trying to find guys, and then he starts to feel that pressure. And because of the repetitive hits, the constant pressure over years, he's developed some bad habits, as anyone would. I don't blame him. Our offensive line has been so bad. What do you expect? And those habits, one of those habits is that when he starts to feel the pressure, his eyes go from downfield to the sticks. And that's where defenses are realizing if they just hold the line at the sticks and they bite down on those routes, they can turn the ball over or force incompletions. So what I would love the Giants to do, give Danny that pocket. Let him get in a rhythm, get that comfortability like you did against Arizona in that second half. And he can keep his eyes downfield. Because when Danny has his eyes downfield and he's able to scan and feel comfortable, he's a really good quarterback. Like, he can do it. He can make the plays. He can be a great player for us. But the problem is when he gets into those bad habits, and the switch flips pretty quickly with him when he gets into a bad habit, when he starts to get under pressure and the old stuff starts to come up, it starts to get worse and worse as games go on sometimes. And then he turns into the old Daniel Jones. And that's where I get a little bit concerned, is like where he is going to excel. People need to step up around him. The offensive line needs to step up and we can see the best of him. But again, I don't know many other quarterbacks that really can operate this offensive line, this offense at a high level with the group that we have. Tyrod was better, but guys, we scored 14 points and 9 points in those two games. It's not like we were running all over the field and scoring points. We failed, to do stuff. And that's not to say that we didn't have a couple of really good drives and got stopped on the 1 yard line and didn't score. And, Saquon fumbles in the red zone. We did those things, those things happen and it's part of football, but, we didn't score that many points. So there's a lot left to happen in this offense. But, Anthony, when you're looking at how Daniel Jones can get better, what do you think the reliance on Saquon is? Do you think it's more about the offensive line, or do you think it's a blend? Or maybe do you think Saquon Barkley has more of an impact?
I think Saquon Barkley makes an impact. The offensive line clearly makes an impact as well. I would say that in terms of factors that have held Daniel Jones back throughout his career, I would say that the absence of a solid offensive line has been more impactful than the absence of Saquon Barkley due to injury. I think that if Daniel Jones had an elite offensive line, like a Philadelphia Eagles level offensive line in front of him for the past 5 seasons, he would be a much different player and a much more differently talked about player than he is right now, because he would be a lot better and he would have a lot more opportunities to take deep shots and make big plays. And that's kind of where you can have the argument and the debate. Should the Giants be investing into Saquon Barkley, or should they be investing into an offensive lineman, right? You can take that money that you invest into Saquon, that $10+ million per year, get yourself at least an average quality starting offensive lineman, and which one would be more impactful for you? That's the big time question that I think that the Giants will face when they get to this offseason and they decide how they're going to build and construct their roster for the future. And I think that's why there was even a discussion over Saquon Barkley being a tradable asset for the Giants, because if they do trade him, that could be a way to reinvest in the offensive line. So when you're asking me how I think that Daniel Jones benefits from Saquon, all the things I said earlier, every quarterback would benefit from having a playmaker like that in their backfield, but I do think that they would benefit significantly more from having an elite offensive line in front of them. But Alex, before we wrap, now we know that the New York Giants don't plan on trading Saquon Barkley, but who are some of the other players on your mind that they could maybe trade before this trade deadline rolls around? You know, there are some other assets, whether it's maybe Leonard Williams, who I know we discussed last week. I don't think they should trade Leonard Williams, but maybe Adoree Jackson, maybe some other guys on expiring deals. Darnay Holmes is also one that I think you could keep a close eye on. He's kind of one of those low-key players that the Giants wouldn't get a whole lot for, but is a guy who could make an impact on a team where cornerback play around the NFL is pretty suspect right now, and Darnay Holmes having a little bit of an experience and still being a young and moldable player, some team might be willing to take a flyer on him for a low draft pick. But who are some of the other names that come to mind and stand out to you as tradable pieces for the Giants ahead of the deadline?
Well, if the Giants win this upcoming weekend, I could pretty much guarantee we're not trading anybody. But if we lose and we're 2-6, I mean, call me crazy, Leonard Williams stands out as a guy that I think other teams would like. I mean, he's picking up his game. He's looking really good. Another team looking for an interior pass rusher, defensive end. I mean, he fits the bill, and he's still very good. So, we'll take on the money. It's already paid for. Just give us a mid-round pick for him, and, you can have a above-average pass rusher that can really help fuel a playoff run. I think that's reasonable. Adoree Jackson, too. Dude, what we saw from Trey Hawkins last week, people are not talking about enough. He was very solid. Cordell Flott, very solid. This team can afford to lose Adoree Jackson right now, in my opinion, because, one, he's not a long-term piece. The Giants aren't winning the Super Bowl this year, guys. I think we can all pretty much agree with that. But I will say, right now, the future is Deonte Banks, who should be going up against against WR1s. Anthony, that's my take. Right now, I want to see Banks go up against top receivers. That is where he's going to learn the most. Going up against the top talents. Terry McLaurin, he had a pretty solid game. He gave a couple big catches, but otherwise he was good. I think that I really like what I saw from Banks. Had an interception, really solid. Hawkins had the highest coverage grade on the team last week, and he was good. So, in my opinion, I'm looking to the youth here. I think that Adoree Jackson's a guy that I'd be willing to trade to a team that might be looking for another cornerback, maybe some support. So that's an option. Darnay Holmes, yeah, I could see it. I don't know who would really want him or what they'd be willing to give for him, maybe a late round pick, but I guess might as well offload him at this point. You could just go with Bobby McCain at worst case scenario. Who else? Xavier McKinney. I mean, I don't think that the Giants are going to be giving Saquon a long-term deal, so they're probably going to tag him again, if I had to guess. That would mean that Xavier McKinney would have to get a long-term deal. Not sure if they're going to give him one. I like Xavier McKinney a lot. I think he's a good player, but he's not like this game-changing kind of catalyst on this team. I don't really get that sense from him. I don't think he's like a superstar. I don't even think he's at star yet. I think he's slightly above average. He's a slightly above average safety. Do you want to play a slightly above average safety star money? You can answer that. Maybe some people do. I'm indifferent right now. I would be fine with it if they paid him. I'd be like, okay, you know what? I like Xavier McKinney. I'm good with that. If they didn't pay him, I'd be like, okay, you know what? Like, I'm also okay with that. I think that's where I'm at with Xavier McKinney. So maybe you don't trade him. Maybe you wait to see how he finishes the season and then make that determination. What do you think about that? Because McKinney's one of those guys. I know you're a big fan of his, and I am too. But I just don't think he's at star status. I don't want to pay him star money if we aren't sure about him just yet.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still on the fence as to whether or not I want to pay Xavier McKinney, but the Giants are going to have to make a decision on that before the offseason rolls around because they can only franchise tag one player. I think that McKinney is a guy who makes a lot of sense to play on a franchise tag next year, get one more year to prove himself, but they're probably going to have to franchise tag Saquon Barkley if they don't get a deal done, so it's really reliant on Saquon Barkley what happens to Xavier McKinney in my mind. But with Xavier McKinney, you said there, you think he's just an above-average player, he's not a star. Personally, I think he has star potential, but other factors have held him back. I don't even know if he's the best fit for the Wink Martindale defense. Like, he is a very versatile player who plays a lot of different roles, but I know that a lot of Giants fans have wanted him to play that centering free safety role. I always thought that he would have been better as a box safety, somebody who plays a lot of man coverage, gets down into the box, and lines up against tight ends and slot receivers like he did for Alabama in college. So it's been interesting to see the Giants' usage of Xavier McKinney for the past several years. I thought that his best year was when he was with Patrick Graham, and he had those 5 interceptions, and yes, they used him as a centering free safety, but he was down in the box a lot making plays. So it's really up to the Giants and whether they think that he's a fit long-term for what Wink Martindale wants to do here with his defensive system. But so far, it seems like they've struggled to figure out what to do with Xavier McKinney. And he also hasn't had the best players playing around him, which really affects you in the secondary especially. I feel like it's very rare that you see an NFL secondary have just one good player and everybody else is bad, because usually that all those bad players pretty much just drag down that one good player because of missed assignments, blown coverages, and a lack of an opportunity to make proper plays. I think that just the secondary, the defensive backfield in an NFL defense, all those players are very reliant on each other to play well. So I think that Xavier McKinney could be a star in the right system with the right players around him, but because safeties are so reliant on other players, he's not a star yet. But I do think that star potential is there, and it is something that the Giants might want to invest in with a long-term contract. But like you said, if the Giants got a nice trade offer for Xavier McKinney, if they were to get a mid-round pick, a high to mid-round pick, I think you probably strongly consider it, just because you don't know what you have in him. You don't know how he fits in your defense, and you don't know what you're going to do this offseason in terms of paying him versus paying Saquon Barkley and some of the other free agents still available. But like I said, I don't think they should trade Leonard Williams. I think that Leonard Williams should still be on this team by the end of the year, and I think that they should extend him and probably prioritize extending him over some of these other players, because Leonard Williams, his contract is going to go down in price now that he's older and this deal is expiring. But he's still playing at a very high level, and he does a whole lot to help other guys around him, like Kayvon Thibodeau playing better now that Leonard Williams is playing better. And of course, Dexter Lawrence has always played great alongside Leonard Williams. So I just think that he's a player that I wouldn't trade at this deadline, and I would actually look to extend in the offseason. But there's a lot of options for the New York Giants. There's some players that we probably didn't even mention that could get traded, and maybe they'll make a trade for somebody. Who knows? Maybe they win this upcoming game against the Jets and they decide, let's go get another piece and try and win some more games this season. I don't really know if that would be the wisest decision. In my opinion, it wouldn't, but we'll see what the Giants decide. And of course, we'll update you on any trades and trade rumors about the New York Giants right here on Fireside Giants. So make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts on the topic down below in the comment section. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, we will catch you all on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.